Hey, welcome back into today's video. We did an all-inclusive type supportive interview with two individuals that were had been affected by Davi Vanity, and it was a unique interview because these two girls were individually impacted and their stories sort of overlapped, and I wanted to do this interview in this type of way because it was chronological and it adds a unique perspective. So watch the video and give these girls a lot of support in the comment section after you're done. If you're unfamiliar with Davi Vanity, he's the former lead singer of a MySpace band that was very popular back in the day that did Warped Tours and everything like that. Had merch that was sold in Hot Topic, real big in the scene. He has currently 22 sexual assault allegations against him. We've been covering it here on the Repzilla channel. I've done a few videos. If you're unfamiliar, I will put those in the description below. Ashley, Lily, and Jess, we're talking about Davi Vanity. Now I want to start with Jess. I wanted to do it in this way because these their stories kind of overlap in like a chronological order, and I feel like it's important to talk about it in this way. So Jess, you said it was around 2006 that you first heard of Davi Vanity. Can you start from there?
Yeah. So back in 2006, back on MySpace, actually, me and Ashley were from the same part of Florida. I had a pretty big following on MySpace, and back then, Davi and I had the same friend group. Garrett, who actually started Blood on the Dance Floor with him, is actually one of my good friends. I knew him back before that band started, and I met him through the downtown Orlando scene. And I didn't know Davi personally. I never had met him outside of MySpace. I knew who he was just because he was this big extreme character on MySpace back then. And at that point in time, he was just a hairstylist. He was just a hairdresser. He wasn't in a band. He was just in that scene. This is when he had his huge following. Just started off like right away. And he had actually... we had been friends on MySpace, and he would like a couple of my pictures here and there. It wasn't anything that, I didn't think much of it. And then one day I actually was on AOL Instant Messenger, or AIM, it's so long ago. And I got a text or an instant message from this person, and I didn't recognize the screen name right away until he started talking. And I thought I was being trolled because I was like, there's no way, like, this person... I mean, granted, yeah, I had, like, this following on MySpace in Florida, but I just thought, like, there's no way, like, because he was sort of just, like, a celebrity, like a local celebrity, you know? And then when I did my research, I found out it was him, and he had found my screen name on my MySpace because I had made it pretty public. That's just how I was. And he messaged me. The conversation at first was just, like, stupid. Like, there was no context to it. It was just like small banter, and then it got into a little bit more, and then finally it got into the like, oh yeah, I'm a hairstylist and I would love to do your hair, this, that, and the other. And mind you, back then, 2006, when this conversation happened, I was 17, and I was very much vocal about my age on my MySpace. I never lied about my age, and I told him how old I was too. And he mentioned, like, I would love to do your hair. I'm a hairstylist, and because I mentioned he had great hair. Little did I know it was a wig.
Right.
And, yeah. And he was like, yeah, well, I would love to do your hair. And at the time, I lived with my parents. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any income at that time. Right. So I specifically told him, like, cool, like, how much do you charge? Like, I would have to ask my parents. And flat out, for me, without hesitation, the next message was, I'll do it for free. And in more like a PC term, I guess, would be, he said, flat out, I'll do it for free, but you have to perform oral sex on me. Although it was in much more disgusting context than that.
Right. Back in the MySpace days. Now this was in 2006.
Yeah.
And he was parading like he was a hairstylist, which we know now. He was wearing wigs. It was a complete getup. It wasn't real.
it was weird though, because like he has pictures, well, I don't know now, but like back then he had pictures of him like in salons. Like I don't know if you remember, Ashley, but he has back then he had pictures of him like in a salon, like cutting hair. Like he had pictures of himself doing hair, you know.
I think it was more like on sets for photo shoots. I don't know if it was actual salons. I mean, my memory from that is so vague now, but I remember like, because I mean, like I said, he had the full kit and everything before. But
right.
Yeah.
Right. Made it very apparent that that's what his job title was. And in Orlando, especially downtown Orlando, like the hair scene, I guess you could call it, like the beauty scene is really big there. And I took it for what it was. I bought it immediately because, I mean, he had the hair to back it up. He had the pictures. He had the kit, everything. But when he said this to me back then, I was super, like, I would say I was like an innocent person, but I wasn't into, I had never had sex before. I'd never been intimate with anybody before. I thought I was actually a lesbian for like a good chunk of my childhood into being a teen. And I was very disturbed. Like I didn't know how to take it because I was so in a bubble when it came to that kind of thing. And I had been previously, I don't know if I could say it, but I had been sexually assaulted as a child. So for me, it scared me. Like hearing it, it wasn't even in person. It was just through a text message conversation through AOL Instant Messenger, but it scared me.
Yeah, I think we've heard other stories through the Chris Hansen live stream as well. It's sort of his MO, where he seems to go for young girls that come from more difficult backgrounds. Did you have conversations with him about the traumatic stuff that you had been through, and do you think that maybe he targeted that?
I don't think I would have said that to him, specifically just because at that point in time, I didn't really remember much about it. It's only, you know, being 31 years old and getting older that I am like having like these actual more vivid memories of what transpired as a child. So I don't think I would have, because I was so closed-minded in that sense. Like I was so off-put by the idea of like anything sexual that as soon as it was brought up, I shut it down immediately. So, but it's weird because like I didn't know of anything about Davi outside of the fact that he was a hairstylist and he had this big following on MySpace. So when I first met Ashley, she worked for me, and that was one of the real conversations that we had with each other. It came up, and you know, when she had mentioned her experience, I had flat out, like, I couldn't believe it because it was such a similar conversation in a way where it was like the hairstylist thing, you know, like it just, and I know like, I just feel like every story sort of counts in a way. Like mine, I'm grateful and thankful that mine didn't pursue any further or, you know, get dragged out any longer. But you can see the steps and like the manipulation and like the tactics, even from just a conversation that I had with him on the computer into like something with Ashley, like each step of the way, everything he says is the same thing he says to everybody else. And I think that making that aware so that other girls are aware of the signs and the things that he says, I think it's important so that other girls can know like this is a trap. Like it's all an entrapment for him. He gets you where he wants you, and then he lures you in.
Exactly. It seems like he's got this down to a pat. He knows exactly what he is that he's doing.
Yeah. And he doesn't change it up.
Exactly.
No, he doesn't change it at all.
He takes advantage of like he was in the hair scene, and then he developed from the hair scene into a full-on Little on the Dance Floor that came later. So you ended up actually blocking him on MySpace?
Yeah, as soon as he said that, well, here's the thing. I had told him, flat out, I was like, oh no, you know, like, sorry. Like I tried to apologize. It was like, you apologize. Like you can't help just to say like, I'm sorry, you know, like, but no, I mean, I would do that in any situation, regardless of the person. That's just who I am. And I felt compelled to be like, you know, whoa, like, sorry, I don't want to make you mad because he's a bigger, well-known person. And I had a name for myself in Florida, and he knew all my friends, and I didn't want like anything to come of that because he could have easily like, he could have like screwed me over in some way, shape or form, you know? And I didn't want that. So I apologized and said, no, you know, that's okay. Like I would much rather pay for it. He made it very clear that there would be no form of payment, that the only payment that he would be accepting was a sexual favor And when I, made it very clear that wasn't what I was into, he straight up tried to manipulate me, tried to make me feel bad, guilted me. It was just, it was a lot, especially for somebody who has had, some kind of trauma, such as,
Right.
in that sense. It was a lot for me to take, and I panicked. And I didn't even say another word. I blocked him immediately on AIM. I blocked him on MySpace. And back then, I was on Stick'em all the time. And on Stick'em, I was so worried that I would end up on Sticky Drama. So I would go on Sticky Drama and just, like, fingers crossed, hope that for some reason he wasn't on there just, like, slandering me by any chance.
So did he directly ask you for a favor in return for doing the hair?
Yeah, he straight up told me flat out the payment would be oral sex.
Tell me about how, when did it occur to you that this was the same guy that had a similar interaction as Ashley? Like, how did that conversation between you guys come up?
Well, back then, can I say the place that we worked at?
I think it's okay to say, well,
neither of us work there anymore. Just
Yeah.
don't say the location.
yeah, go right ahead then, yeah.
Okay, cool. So
Just
I was
just don't say the address and stuff like that.
No, I still work at that mall, so I don't want to say the address.
Right.
Yeah, so Ashley was actually a coworker of mine. I was her boss at Hot Topic. I was the store manager there, and she was one of my assistant managers. And we had the conversation started because we were having customers. I mean, every day we'd have girls come in, literally young girls, young girls come in and be asking us for Blood on the Dance Floor merchandise, which we didn't carry. I don't know if we carried it online, but I know in stores we didn't anymore. And they would come in, and it was just like an everyday occurrence. And I think like we both just talked about the fact that the music was absolute garbage. And then we talked about the fact that Dobby Vanity is absolutely garbage. And then I don't remember who brought up the conversation about Dobby first, but we just kind of like had that moment where it was just like, oh shit, wow. We were just like, wow, we have like very similar stories, except for hers is like a lot more traumatic. And I related to her in the sense I'm very motherly, and it hurt me to hear her say that because Ashley, she's one of my people. She knows that, and it hurt me because I'm older than her, and back then I was 17, and this person was saying very similar things to me, and it stuck knowing that somebody that I cared about and was close to had something similar happen to them, but in a very much so more dramatic way. And the conversation just kind of ended at that. And we brought it up a couple different times, but it was basically based off the fact that there's still young girls who come in looking for that merchandise, who idolize this person, who's, out to
not a good person.
pretty much prey on young women. And these girls, they don't even think twice about it.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest reasons we're even covering this story is if other girls hear your guys' story, may they have been through the similar experience, but it will, other girls that are going through this or could potentially go through this will hear you, and they'll hear his manipulation tactics, and they'll kind of understand, oh wait, that's exactly what's happening to me, or I know what to look out for.
Yeah, because each thing that he says to everybody. It's never changing. The story is always the same. And I think it's important to recognize that those little things that he says, like I'm a hairstylist, I'm in a band, this, that, and the other, those are just little ways he's manipulating you into a conversation that's not appropriate at all. I don't care how old you are. Those conversations, when they're unwarranted, they're completely inappropriate.
Exactly. Even if it's an adult talking to an adult,
exactly.
It's still not good.
It's not good.
Now, Ashley, your experience with him actually started around 2008, and you were 13.
I had just turned 13. It was in December of 2008. My mom took me and a friend to go see the Medic Droid at the Social in Orlando. So shout out to the Medic Droid. Throwback for everybody there. But I had never heard of him or heard of his music until the day before the show. Like I saw somebody post on a MySpace bulletin, like something with a very like grotesque and like raunchy title, and I'm like 13, so I'm like, oh, what's that? And I opened it, and it was it was like a music video for one of his songs, and the name in itself is inappropriate to say, but I remember looking at it and I was like, this is really bad. But he, again, like the same thing with Jess, it's like his hair was like what was popular back then. So I was like, he looks cool. Like, I thought he was so cool because I couldn't have my hair like that at the time. So like, I had this like flat, straight scene haircut, and then he had this like wildly teased hair, and I was like, that's so cool. And then when we got to the concert, I saw him working his own merch booth, and I was like, oh, that's the guy that I just saw yesterday. And like, when you're a kid, like, it doesn't matter if you've never listened to the music before, really, or if you're into the band, you see that person and you're like, whoa, like, and you like start to fangirl because of the pedestal that you see them on. Because like the show was packed and it was a bunch of people wearing their merchandise and everything. So I went right up to the merch booth, but I was pretty shy when I was like 12 or 13. So I went up to him and I was like kind of timid, but I was like, I really like your hair. Like, I like your band, even though I didn't, but I was just trying to make conversation. And he just blurted out and he's like, oh my God, I love you so much. And like, given I'm sure a lot of people there would have loved to have heard that, but like I was so like shy and didn't know him. So I was just like, I love you too, I guess, cool. And then he like was making conversation with me, given I can't remember what any of it was because it was over 10 years ago, or about 10 years ago.
Right.
But he just was like talking to me, making out of a conversation, like gave me a shirt and everything. And I was like, oh, we'll talk later. And then we just went on with the rest of the show and it was no big deal. But during the show, like if anybody's been to the Social, they know it's a very small venue. And it's one that he played at quite a few times. And the talent, I guess, of the shows is always walking around. Usually not like the headlining band, but like, the supporting bands are always walking around the venue, merchandising, like making connections with people. And my mom actually ran into his manager, who at the time was Rebecca. And I don't think that she still works for him. Somebody even said that she might have passed away recently. I don't know anything about her, but that's who was the manager at the time. And she was connecting with my mom. And my mom was essentially like, hey, like what can they meet the other bands? And Rebecca was like, well, I can't really do anything about the other bands, but if you want, like, Davi does hair, so maybe I can get you guys a connection and you can have like a special day where he comes to do your daughter's hair, like with, right, my mother's supervision. And she was like, of course. So the show's over. I'm over the moon when she tells me. And like, even my friend who had never heard of them either, we're both just like, oh my God, like it's just cool to have the concept of right, a rock star coming to your house,
Exactly, because the power dynamics, it's
exactly
insane, especially you being a 13-year-old girl. And it's something that you said, Davi was one of the only members of the bands that was out there at his own booth, mm-hmm, waiting for people.
Yeah, because Garrett was there, but he was like away. Because I remember actually that same night at the end of the show, we went back to the merch booth and Garrett was there, but like he was distant. Like he was doing his own thing, like really quiet. And like I even tried to talk to him because, I was like, well, this guy talked to me. Let me try talking to him. And it was just very distant. And like he was very much the voice of the band to the fans. And like at the time that was super cool because you didn't see that very often, especially in like a town like Orlando. Like I was much younger than Jess, so I wasn't aware of the bar scene or anything like that, so I didn't know anything about him until that day.
March 2009, your mom had set up a hair appointment.
Yeah, we had me and him, he had added me on MySpace. If it wasn't that night, it was within the following week, and we got to talking on there, but it was like idle conversation. None of it was like inappropriate. He wasn't saying any grotesquely sexual things to me. It was just very. And what's really gross about it is that it was relatable conversation for me to have as like a 13-year-old. Like we were talking so easily because he was able to make himself sound so much younger.
Right. How old was he at the time?
This is where it gets like, I misspoke in my last interview about this. And I said that he was like 24, 25 at the time, but or no, I said that he told me he was like 21, but I think he told me he was like 22, but he was actually 25 or 24. So he lied to me and my mother about his age, like very greatly, given it doesn't make it any better to be 21, but still it was this, it was like, I don't know. It was like a welcoming dynamic of like just having somebody cool that I might appreciate just coming over for the night. And because he drove over an hour to get to my house and it was late at night, my mom, you know, let him stay the night with the rules that he would sleep on the couch. And that we would, me and my friend, because my friend that was at the show with me went to my house with me that day for, you know, the hair cutting and the slumber party. And we were in my room and he was in the couch. But yeah, so he came over and he had like this full hair cutting kit. Like it was a giant case. He had a million things in it, like a bunch of different combs, razors, shears, everything that you can expect a hairdresser.
He was super professional.
Yeah, it seemed legit because I had never seen that before. You know, I had like a cruddy hair razor from Sally's that was like, you know, $3. Yeah, we all had that one. I was like,
we all had that.
Something that you said that stood out to me was he drove over an hour to get there. Another girl that reached out to me actually caught him. Like he drove, I think it was nearly 2 hours to get to her house, but she said that she was alone, and when he got there, he realized there was a whole group of friends there with her, and then he was very uncomfortable and then ended up leaving.
Yeah, because there's too many witnesses.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good for her, but an unfortunate circumstance all over. But yeah, no, it was fully supervised. My mom was there, you know. We would every now and again, like if me and my friend went into my room to like get something or talk about something, you know, he'd poke his head in, but my house was small, so like you could see from the kitchen, you know, what was going on in there, so it was no big deal. But later in the night, you know, my mom went to bed and he was supposed to go sleep on the couch, but he came into my room and I didn't think anything of it because
I do have a question. You did say that your mom made some drinks for Dobby.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because she found like his manager was just kind of talking, and she was like, "Oh, he likes Pink Ladies," which is like Bacardi and pink lemonade, and just like
That's
she
strange.
was just like saying like things like that. And my mom was like, "Oh, well, I'll make them for him because he's gonna stay over anyways." Like whatever, like you know, she wasn't. I mean, how do you expect someone to come over with those ill intentions when you're supervised? It wasn't until after she wasn't there that things started happening. And given me and my friend, you know, we were being like sneaky teenagers and like we snuck some of the drinks and like he snuck us some as well. So, but you know, she didn't know. It was all things that were like when she was in the bathroom, he would be like, "Oh, here, take this," like things like that. So she had no way of knowing that it was happening.
Right. Tell me, what happened after your mother went to bed?
Well, my mom went to bed after we like, you know, got our haircuts and stuff. And it was like quiet for a couple of minutes, but then he came into our room and we were still awake. Like we weren't laying down or anything. We were just sitting on my bed, just hanging out. And like, we didn't think anything of it because we're just like, "Oh, cool. He wants to hang out with us." And like, we weren't expecting anything weird to happen. We just wanted to hang out, you know? So he came in the room and he sat on my bed and we're all just talking. God, I can't remember anything we talked about that was of normal substance, but, eventually the conversation kind of derails into like sexuality because, you know, when you're 13, you start kind of figuring things out. And it was about like bisexuality in particular, because I had a crush on my friend at the time and we kind of had this like unspoken like crush like all through middle school, and he could sense that, I guess. So,
was this sexual conversation, was this pushed out by him? Did he? Is it?
Yeah. Because like he would like say something, I can't think of anything specific, but he would say something and we would both get kind of bashful at each other, and then he would be like, "Oh, do you like each other?" And he would like start talking about like bisexuality. He's like, "Well, do you think you're bisexual? Do you think that, you know, you're gay? Like, do you like each other? Like, have you guys ever kissed? Why don't you kiss right now?" Like some, you know, it just kept derailing further. We were super uncomfortable because I think she was 14 and I was 13, and like I had like one kiss with like a 2-day boyfriend in like elementary school, and it was like a little peck and it was over. Like I'd never kissed anybody like that before, never had like any remotely sexual encounter with anybody. And he just like, he kept pressuring and he was like, "Well, why don't you guys kiss right now? Like I think that would be so good for you two, because if you like each other, then you should do that." Like just being very persuasive, trying to get into our heads to where we were thinking, you know what, maybe we should do that, but it was still uncomfortable. So we ended up in front of him, but it was super awkward, and like we both even pulled away and we're just like, I don't know, like that just feels weird. And then eventually he just kept going like, "No, like just keep going, like it's okay, like this is like that, like do you like that, like you guys like each other, right?" And like was just kind of like kept on like coercing us into keep on like keeping going. And eventually he like got so close that like he was kind of in the middle of us, and it turned into like me kissing him and him kissing her and her kissing me, and like this like three-way type of kiss. And
it's crazy.
It's
crazy.
insane.
Yeah, it's because he's a 25-year-old man
And your
and
children.
a 13-year-old, and your friend was 14.
Yeah, and given she
Literal
was a little bit
children.
more well developed than I was, but still, like, I mean, I've always been, you know, tiny, little, no, you know, curves anywhere, but it was weird. And it was almost like he had this, like, he had his sights set on me, and I feel like maybe it is because, you know, I wasn't the more developed one, and he kind of, looking back, he liked the adolescent kind of look, and that's really disturbing to think about. But because he did, like, with my friend, he never contacted her after, you know, that night or anything. But getting too ahead of myself, it eventually came to the point where, like, me and her were so uncomfortable that we were like, okay, like, let's go to bed, like we just want to go to sleep. So we were all laying down. It was him in the middle, me and then her. And at this point, I'm conflicted because this is somebody that I hold on a pedestal. So I'm like, well, I don't want to tell my mom because even if I'm uncomfortable, like, maybe this is a normal thing that adults do, so I should, you know, continue with it. And so he was laying between us, and he turned to face me, and he started kissing me, like, by myself or by ourselves. And I, again, like, I was just kind of paralyzed because I didn't know how to kiss. Like, I was just kind of sitting there, like, taking that. And he, like, took my hand and he, like, put it down where he had already taken out his genitals, and he put my hand on them. And I quickly was like, like, I pulled my hand back and I was like, no, like, all I said was like, no, like, I don't know, like, I can't do that. And he was like, no, come on. And I was like, no, like, I've never done that before. And he's like, no, like, come on, like, it's okay. And he pushed my hand back there again. And then when I pulled back again, and I was like, no, like, I've never done that before, I'm not comfortable, he got really annoyed, but, like, quietly. So he was just like, and just, like, rolled over to face my friend. And I heard them talking and, like, whispering, but I asked her the next day, and she said that he didn't do that to her. So it was just me.
So it's almost like he was upset, and then you said that the next day, everything was normal.
Yeah, it was relatively normal. And meanwhile, I'm, like, lying. I remember when he rolled over, I was even like, I'm sorry, like, trying to whisper, like, to where I didn't, you know, let my friend know that anything bad had happened. And in the event that she was okay with it, I didn't want to look like, you know, the baby in the situation. So I was like, I'm sorry, like, trying to, you know, not coerce him into coming back to me, but to, like, have a conversation to be like, I'm sorry, you know. And then he just stayed the other way. It was almost like he was trying to make me jealous.
Right. Yeah.
But then the next day, like, we woke up and everything was normal. He was on the couch, you know, nothing.
And, like, nothing happened. He's got this way about him that where he does these things, and he wants to act like it's normal. He what he's doing is normalizing the abuse.
Yes.
Exactly. He has a switch in his head. It's like he literally goes from, like, being normal to being like, nope, sorry.
And it looks like not only does he normalize the abuse, but he's very good in a way where he can manipulate the person into feeling like they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you have to apologize.
And we talked about this.
These people who have no experience, so they don't know any better.
Yeah.
You know, like, everybody's just like, is that what I'm supposed
to
do?
It's uncomfortable.
That was my thought.
Right. When you're put in that weird predicament, you can't help but apologize because it's so uncomfortable for you that you feel like maybe it's uncomfortable for them.
Right. Now, we talked about this before, and I know the viewers are going to want to know about this too. The mom letting him come over and then falling asleep. He had this way about him that let people put their guard down, like almost like he was very innocent.
Well, and something else, like, I did the interview with Chris, and people were tearing my mom apart in the comments, which I totally understand being critical about it because it's a horrible situation. But she also, you know, every time she turned around is when he would do something. And we were so young that we thought it was okay. So we were like, okay, cool. Like, she had no idea what was going on, especially because when she went to bed, you know, he went to our room and then he went out back on the couch. So as far as she knows, the last time she saw him, he was on the couch, and the next morning he was on the couch. Like, nothing between happened. And she did come to check on us at some point in the night, but it was, like, after that, because that all happened in, like, the period of an hour. So she went to come check on us at, you know, at, like, you know, a couple hours into the night, and we were asleep.
Did he get up and leave the room?
Yeah.
So he got up and left the room. Can you tell me more about his behavior towards your mother?
Oh, he has this thing with parents, where he just, I don't know how to describe it because it's been so long since, I've been in his presence, and now I do
Right.
have such a tainted view on him. But if I have to, really think about what it was back then, he was funny. He would just make these jokes that made everybody laugh. He was
He has a
almost
charm.
gentle. Yeah, and I hate to say he's charming because you look at him and you're like, ugh, but like he was charming,
Right.
like
He has that
and
charm about him.
yeah, and it's so unfortunate because you know there really was just no red flags, and the red flags that were given to me, I was too young to understand.
Right.
So, like I said, as far as she knew, nothing happened, and I should have told her right then and there, because if I did, she would have made sure that never happened again. She would have called the police, like a million things would have happened, but I didn't say anything.
Well, that's part of his. You can't be held responsible for that because you're 13 years old. That's part of his manipulation tactic. You felt like it was nothing was done wrong. You probably felt like it was consensual at the time.
No, exactly, because in my opinion, that's towards the end of everything. I didn't realize that it was like messed up until a couple years later when I really sat back and reflected on it. Because when something like that is actively happening to you, you are just kind of like seeing just straight in front of you. You're not seeing everything on the side. You're not seeing the big picture. You're just seeing what's right in front of you. Especially so young, like you're just developing all these emotions and feelings. So I had never even had a remotely sexual interaction with anybody.
Yeah, that's another thing is a lot of these girls, he was their first sexual experience.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
hits
horrible.
them. He hits them. I mean, think about it. He's going after girls who are at a time in their life when they are literally developing. So, I mean, I can't speak for men, but as a woman or as a young girl, when you're developing like that, you don't know. You really don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when somebody is pursuing you in a sexual sense or in an inappropriate sense, especially for somebody in a young age, you don't know what's wrong. You really don't know what's wrong because you don't have
it's like
that
a confusing
experience.
form of flattery, because it's like in a way you feel flattered by it, but it's also very confusing. And
you're
another
insecure. And as soon as this person who is this, celebrity, this local celebrity, or this at the time, I guess for you, like a bigger celebrity. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you're a young girl, you're very insecure. You're developing. You don't know how to take all this stuff in. And when somebody who's a bigger stature than you is giving you this attention, especially the kind of attention he's giving to Ashley, I mean, look at Damien's situation. Damien was 10. Like that. Damien, they thought that Davi was their person. So it's all manipulation. It's taking that confusion and knowing very much so that this is a child and they're not going to know the difference between right and wrong, and taking full advantage of that.
And it's especially like a power dynamic because when you look at it at the time, he had so many followers and he was so popular that's like, even though back then it was only like, like 100-something thousand, that in 2020, that's equivalent to like a couple million on Instagram. Because back then, things were a bit different. And he was so notorious for popping off on anybody who disrespected him. And I was so scared that he would be upset at me and like post something about me.
Exactly.
That's what I wanted to. I wanted to talk to you more about what happened afterwards. You said that he ignored you afterwards.
Yeah. There was like I want to say that was in March, but it might have been February. I just know that between the show to when we hung out was a couple months. It was probably like February. And then a couple months go by and we just don't speak. Like he just is not responding to any of my MySpace messages. And like, I'm over here heartbroken thinking that I messed something up and that I upset him. And like, I didn't want to upset anybody, especially, I hate to sound like broken record, but it's like, I didn't know if that was okay. And I figured if he was this older person than me, then it was okay. And I just felt like I did something wrong, or like I had hurt his feelings, or I had insulted him. And he replied to me like a couple of times on MySpace. And every time that he did reply, even though it was few and far between, I was just like, whew, like, okay, like you're not mad at me. Like, this is fine. We're all good. And like, I want to say that I went to a couple of shows in that time span because he would reach out and say like, hey, come to this show. Like, I'll get you in for free. And then me and my mom would go. And, but otherwise we didn't have any like personal conversations until about like I think like April probably is whenever he finally was like, yeah, like I miss you, like let's hang out again. Like I remember specifically he was saying that he missed me
Why
and
do
that he
you
wanted to hang out with me again.
Why do you think
And
that he just did that in April?
what happened? I'm sorry.
Why do you think that he just reached out in April?
Because he was bored.
Bored. There's
Because
one
he
thing
probably didn't have anything else to do.
one thing that
Nobody
caught
else.
my attention was you said that he basically ignored you, but on and off talked to you for a period of time. To me, that sounded like a form of manipulation because
Absolutely. Yeah.
this was back in 2009, and 25 years old. How long of a time frame did he go exactly without talking to you?
Like between a couple of weeks to a month, because like it was all between like, you know, December to May, and then we stopped really talking in like about July, but the last time I ever physically saw him was in May. So it was all like, you know, like a couple weeks at a time, would send one message back, and then a couple more weeks would go by unless there was a show or something going on that would like benefit him. But then in April is when he was like, you know, I miss you, like I want to hang out again. But I've noticed a common thing because a bunch of, you know, the survivors of him have reached out to me since everything, and it's so common that when he feels remotely insulted by you because you deny something or you're not fully into something, he'll ignore you for a certain period of time. That way, when he does message you, it's like, oh my God, like, okay, you messaged me, like, we're good now. So it's 100% a manipulation technique, and it's very disgusting.
So he reaches out to you in April. What does he say to you?
He basically was just like, I miss you, like we should hang out again sometime. And I was like, yeah, we totally should, but like we didn't know what to do because we don't live in a huge town with a bunch of stuff to do. So there was like a mall with a movie theater and some restaurants. So I was like, well, we can go see a movie or something. And he's like, yeah, we should totally go see a movie. And we ended up seeing, I think the way I've kind of figured out my timeline is based off of what movies we saw, because we saw 2 movies when we were friends.
Right.
First one was Angels and Demons, which came out in May 2009, and the second one was Up, which also came out in May 2009. So the second 2 events were very close together, like they were like May, June. But so he basically sets up a day for me, like, oh, when's good for you? Meanwhile, I'm in school, so I can't do anything unless it's on a weekend. And I'm also trying to convince my mom, who was going through a pretty unfortunate relationship at our home. I should also point out, like, we had 2 homes. We had a home where she lived with, or where we lived primarily with my stepfather and her. And then we had like our old house that we just always kept, that we would go to every now and again, just on weekends, because they had a pretty bad relationship. So that was like our escape. And there was a bunch of confusion between setting up days because, you know, her and her husband would be arguing and we would have to stay at home or something. So finally, I got her to agree with me on a day, which is why it took so long to get from April to May to, you know, hang out. And then that's when we saw, oh, Angels and Demons is playing. That looks kind of cool, I guess, which it was a cool movie. I didn't know anything about it. But we set up a day. My mom agreed to it, and she trusted him to, you know, take me to the movies and everything because, you know, she didn't have a reason not to. I will fully admit for everybody in the comments that should not have ever happened. That was a very big oversight, but I needed some type of figure in my life. And I think that she kind of hoped that he would be like the bigger brother in my life, if that makes any sense, to kind of help me get through everything that we were going through. And he, you know, like me and Jess have said, and like many others have said, he was so charming at the time that he made you think that he could, like, he would always, him and my mom had a great relationship because he was so good at manipulating conversation. And so he drives over again from Orlando, and he again is going to stay on the couch that night because he drove so far and it's already late at night. He would never hang out like during the day. It was always late at night. So I feel like that was honestly kind of an excuse to be like, oh, I'm tired, or it's gonna be a long night, can I just crash there, type of thing.
Right.
But so he comes over, you know, picks me up, and we go to see the movie, and it was fine. You know, we watched it. It was a cool movie, and like he put his arm around me at some point, and like it was just like a little cuddle. And at my mind at this point in time is like, okay, if he's doing this again, maybe he actually likes me, which is, you know, an unfortunate pattern with the Jesse Slaughter situation. Is like he makes you feel like, you know, it's like almost a forming relationship. And like, given as a, you know, almost 25-year-old woman now, I'm like, that's disgusting. But at the time, I never had a relationship, so it seemed normal to me. So we're in the movies, and he like has his arm around me and like kisses me a couple of times and whatnot. And at the end of the movie, we left, or we're walking out, and there's an Outback, like a restaurant in the parking lot of the movie, or of the mall. And he was like, hey, I have some friends that are hanging out at the Outback. Do you want to go hang out with them? And I'm like, of course I want to go hang out with your adult friends. Like, I want to be cool. You know, I want to be sitting at this table with all your friends on MySpace, and I want to be, maybe they'll post about me. Maybe I'll be one of the cool kids, you know?
Right.
So we start driving to the parking lot for the restaurant, and he parks around the back of it. And it's like super dark. There's like, you know, we're behind the dumpsters and everything. There's no streetlights. There's no cars around us. And I was kind of confused, but it didn't like, I had no reason to feel threatened by him. So I didn't question it more than like, oh, what about your friends? Like, what are we doing here? And this is where it does get, you know, kind of intimately graphic,
Right.
for lack of better words. So he, you know, was just like, oh no, they'll wait on us. It's fine. No big deal. Like, I would just want to hang out a little bit longer, just me and you, and put his arm around me, you know, unbuckled his seatbelt. So we were just chilling for a second, but it very quickly became like him trying to like pull my face in to kiss him. And of course, you know, I was like, okay, like I'll try kissing you a little bit, I guess. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. So I was more uncomfortable by the fact that like I didn't know what I was doing. So I felt inexperienced, and I felt like I shouldn't have been doing it because I couldn't do it to the level that he would want me to, I guess. But so we're kissing, and he's like making it much deeper than any kiss that I've ever had. And I continuously kind of pull back just whenever I feel like, you know, it's a little bit too, you know, hot and heavy. And he's like, no, like, it's okay. Like, I just, you know, I had a really good time tonight. Just kept reiterating that, kept telling me how much fun he had. And then he like starts pushing on the back of my head and towards like going towards his lap. And I pulled back like instantly, because I was like, I've never done that. I don't want to do that. It was like the same conversation of when he put my hand on his genitals the first time. I was like, no,
Right.
like, I don't know how to do that. Like, I'm not comfortable with that at all. And he's like, no, like, come on. And it was so like forceful that it was like my face was literally smushed like against the button of his pants where he was like trying to undo them. And I was so like, I pulled back really quick, and I was like, stop. Like, I finally got a little bit loud, and I'm like, dude, like, stop. I'm not comfortable with this. I don't like you forcing me to do this. And as soon as I said the word forcing, he was like night and day, like got angry, like was
Right.
pissed.
Like
And
some kind of trigger word.
Yeah, because it's like he just doesn't want to be told what he's doing wrong. It's like he's going to keep doing these wrong things, but the minute you point them out, it's like you are just blacklisted from his life. But so he got angry, and he's like, you know, angrily putting his seatbelt back on, and he's like switching the car to drive and just speeds out of the parking lot. And I barely even had my seatbelt back on, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, it's instantly apologizing again, because he was like, I would never force you to do anything. Why would you say that? Why would you say that I would ever do anything like that to you? I would never want to make you uncomfortable. Meanwhile, I'm in tears in the passenger seat, like, okay, like, I'm sorry, like, continuously apologizing for whatever I did to upset him. But I even said, like, whenever he kept saying, like, I wouldn't force you, eventually got to the point where I was like, but you did. Like, you did force my head, and it made me uncomfortable.
Did you say this to him?
What?
Did you say this to him?
Yeah, I said that to him. It was after, like, going back and forth of, like, me just being like, I'm sorry, and him saying, I would never do that. Eventually, I just kind of snapped, and I was like, but you did. Like, you forced my head down. Like, I was trying to convey to him that I trusted him, but also I wasn't okay with it. And it's like there was no boundaries. And, like, it just, you know, if you're in a relationship or you're doing anything like that, you have to have boundaries with somebody. And he just had no understanding of them. And it's really annoying, because my friend called me while this was all happening, because I promised her, because she was a big fan of his, like, I promised her that she could talk to him. So she calls me, and I'm like crying, trying to hold back tears, and I'm literally, to get like brownie points with him, I'm like, I made him mad, I made him upset, I'm sorry, I'll have him call you tomorrow. And he never called her, you know, we never really talked about it again. Like, when she saw me at school later, she was like, what happened? And I was like, nothing, don't worry about it. But so we start like getting closer back to my house, and he parked in like a more wooded area on my street, which was like 200 feet from my house. And he pulled to the side of the road, and he unbuckled his seatbelt again. And I'm over here like still tearing up, and he's like, I'm sorry, like, you're right, that was wrong, I shouldn't have done that to you, like, I would never want to make you uncomfortable. So it's like everything he was saying, but much more gentle this time. And
It's
I'm
almost
like
to your
still,
house at this point.
it was like 200 feet from my house. It was very close. Like
He probably
if
didn't. Yeah, he didn't
like
need
if
to
my
go
mom
in
had
there
like
like
walked
that.
into the driveway, she could have seen the car, you know.
Mm.
But again, it was in like a more wooded area, so it was darker, so you couldn't really see anything. So he turned off his headlights, whatever, and he's like pulling me back in for a hug, and he's like holding me, and he's like, "I'm sorry, like I don't want to make you uncomfortable," and then does the same fucking thing. Sorry to, you know,
You're fine.
to curse like that, but he does the same thing, and he's pushing on my head again. And at that point, I was just so defeated, and you know, my concept on relationships was so vague that I was like, well, maybe I should do this because I've never done it before. Maybe I should try it, and maybe that'll be a good thing for us. Like maybe that will help us be closer. So I just gave in and I did it, and yeah. And just went back home after like nothing happened.
Right. I'm sorry that happened.
Me too.
One thing I know we talked about before was the timelines of this with Jess's interaction in 2006, yours in 2008, and we talked about what had happened and how it was the Huffington Post reported on what was her name?
I don't know.
Diana Farrell. Diana Farrell.
From Colorado.
Yeah. This was an incident that was mishandled greatly by the police. And this was said to have happened in 2007. And you said that you actually remember this happening.
Yeah, but it wasn't 2007. And that's where I don't know if somebody just put the wrong date, or because the case was so greatly, you know, mishandled that I wouldn't doubt that they entered something wrong, given I'm not going to sit here and accuse, you know, the police department of messing it up.
Right.
But, you know, hear me out. Garrett was still in the band when I was hanging out with him. And I didn't even meet him and Garrett until 2008 or 2008, you know, 2009. But Garrett left the band because this happened in the middle of me and Davi being friends, which was 2009. So there's something wrong with the dates there, but you know, I remember him going like on the tour, and I remembered when he came back there was like some weird speculation with everything happening, but you know, the internet wasn't as full of information as it is now. Like you can just go on MySpace or Facebook and just check to see what the news stories were. So I was very, you know, out of the loop. I had no idea. I just saw where a couple people had talked about it, and like a couple people had messaged me and been like, "Hey, have you heard?" And I was like, "What?" And I literally called him. I was like, "What is going on with this?" And he quickly was like, no, it's nothing. You know, Garrett's an a-hole, like whatever. Don't worry about it. Like, it's fine. I already have somebody replacing him, which was Jay. And I literally had that phone conversation with him where I was so confused looking to him for answers about it. And he was like, no, don't worry about it. It's cool. Like nothing happened. So that's very strange.
I remember when we originally talked about this, I was talking about the timeline of this, and I thought it had this. He was actually charged with lewd and lascivious battery, and he was let go because the mom just wanted to put out a no contact order. And we talked about how this took place in Florida, wasn't it?
Was it Florida? I thought it was Colorado.
Yeah, it was Colorado.
I think Colorado was another incident. Let me check real quick.
Florida was
it was in Pinellas County.
Is that Florida?
Yes.
So yeah, that incident specifically took place in Florida, and Florida has a law where you're not allowed to just be like, oh, I didn't know the age.
I didn't know the age, yeah.
You're supposed to be held accountable. And I was thinking, well, this was 2007. Had this been taken care of then what happened to you wouldn't have happened. And then that's when you told me that the timelines had to have been wrong because you remember this.
Yeah, they had to have. And like, I mean, I don't have my old phone. I can't prove that I spoke to him, but like with as much of my words as I can give you, like we had a phone conversation as this happened because, and you know, if I really dig through MySpace, like I have a couple pictures that one of my friends has been able to recover for me, but if I really had somebody dig through it, they could probably find a picture of me, him, and Garrett. So like he was in the band at the time. Like that's how I at least, you know, separate the timelines based off of the members, because that's when the split happened. But you know, that whole case, if I understand why they chose to just have a no contact order, because, you know, like we've said, he was very popular at the time. And even if legally everything, you know, was taken care of, his fans still would have stuck up for him. Just like to this day, they're still sticking up for him. Absolutely. Somebody just sent me the other day where some 13-year-old posted a screenshot of him following her and her freaking out about it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm just, that was literally 2 days ago. And I'm just so disgusted because this is never going to stop. Like, well, it will after, you know, we shed more light on it, but
we're gonna keep on this until the right people get a hold of this and they do something about it, because he can't just be let go free to just keep hurting and just keep hurting like this.
It's so unfortunate because he knows what he's doing, because he's targeting these young girls who have that fear in their hearts of something like that happening, because they're so worried about what other people think about them. You know, like I commend that girl for reporting it, because if I didn't, you know, and so many other people didn't, because we were so afraid. And it's just it's scary because he knows exactly what he's doing.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you guys for coming on the channel and telling your stories. I do believe that this is important work that's going to save a lot of people from going through these similar experiences. I want to let you guys both speak. And what do you want to say to the girls that are following Dobby Vanity and to Dobby Vanity?
Do you want to go first, Jess?
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to say real quick that when he specifically, I'm sorry, this is going to be not to the girls right now, but just it's something that just kind of makes me really angry for him to tell you, like, I would never force you to do something like that. When you're a grown man and you are pursuing a child who can't consent, you are forcing yourself on that person. And I think it's really important that young girls understand that there is such thing as consent, and that when your brain isn't properly developed all the way, you are not able to really make those decisions for yourself. And there are so many young women out there who have been sexually abused, sexually assaulted, in more ways than one, who are more susceptible to it happening to them again. And he is always going to be that guy who continues the cycle. So it's important to recognize that whether you choose to believe it or not, everybody who's telling their story has the background to go on. And if you just listen to those the little bit of information that you're getting, you'll start to see the pattern. And when you find the pattern, you can pull yourself out of it and you can end that cycle. And it starts with just listening. Whether you choose to believe anybody or not, listen. Because when you start to see it, you'll understand a little bit better. Listen. It's so important to listen. Believe it or not, you have to listen. You do.
I agree with that.
It's the only way to learn the pattern.
I agree with that. Ashley?
I think to put it into kind of perspective for young girls, right now, if something like that is happening, you're going to think, not me. That's not me. Like, I'm special in this situation. But when you get older, and this is going to sound, I'm sure, to younger girls, so, you know, back in my day, but when you get older, you really realize how disgusting, because I'm almost 25 now. When I see a 13-year-old, I'm like, where's your parents? You know, like, I would never look at them in a sexual way. And to put it into perspective for them, you know, let's say you're 13 or 14 and you're in middle school or entering high school. When you look at middle schoolers, like, yeah, look at those kids. You know, you view them as below you. So how can you not, you know, kind of at least put that into perspective of he's that much older than you and he's looking at you and you were so clearly a child. Like, I don't know if that makes sense with how I'm wording it, but it's like you have to take that same respect and put it somewhere else of that point of view, because there's no way, or there's no reason for a 25-year-old man, now 35, by the way, everyone, he's 35 years old now.
There's no even 35.
Yeah, there's no reason for a 35-year-old man who could be your parent to be sexually attracted to you, and he's not attracted to you, he's using you.
Right, he's 35 years old. He puts on makeup and dresses up to look younger.
Yeah.
And just like we talked about on the call,
he looks younger now.
He looks so much younger now. He looks so much more younger. It's insane to me.
think about the girls who aren't looking at those records or Googling his age, and they just are believing he's probably still lying about his age to this day.
Exactly.
To these girls to seem more relatable. But I promise you, there's nothing that you as a 13-year-old child have in common with a 35-year-old man.
I don't care if he changes his name to Kawaii Monster, because Kawaii is very much a child's play thing. I don't care.
Couldn't be more obvious.
Yeah.
Well,
if someone's still seeing a pediatrician, they're a child. I'm sorry, they're a child.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, again, I thank you guys for coming on the channel and sharing your stories. I think it's going to be very helpful and it's going to be very impactful.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, I want to thank Ashley and Jess for coming on and telling their stories. I have other interviews that I've been conducting about this same topic. You should see those roll out within the next month. If you know anybody else that's been impacted or you've been impacted by Davi Vanity, don't be afraid to reach out to me on Facebook DMs. We are very willing to listen to your stories about this, and don't forget that your stories can empower and give strength to other people that have been affected by this person. Other than that, I'd like to thank my patrons. This whole situation has been very difficult for a lot of people involved. I know when I first set out to do this research on this video and do an investigation on Davi Vanity, I think there was something over 50 people that reached out with personal experiences, many of which were not even in the major articles like the one written by Huffington Post. And I have been interviewing and listening to these girls, listening to their stories ever since. So the main objective is to keep telling everybody's story, to keep empowering, to get this in front of the eyes of the people that can do something about it, and keep people safe. I know one disturbing thing that I have heard is that Davi Vanity is planning to hang out with another underage girl very soon. I heard this through the grapevine. I'm going to be looking into that, so stay tuned. And thank you for 126,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you for 5,000 on the Facebook page. I do have a goal of 10,000 on the Facebook page this year, so if you want to help out with that, link is in the description, because I know that you're repping. If you're repping, you're gagging. How you do that? All you gotta do is subscribe, notifications turned on, be in the comment section to every single video, because I'm going to be there. Greg the Cat's going to be there, and the rest of the Repzilla community as well. And I expect to see that too, because this channel loves you.